Hello everyone, welcome back. So we are now marching forward in the meditations. You can think of the meditations sort of metaphorically as movement. And if you do that, then the first one is really Descartes backtracking, right? It's really him sort of backtracking and moving away from what he thinks he knows because he's concerned that there might be errors and mistakes snuck into the things that he thinks are certainly true. So he's backtracking. He's not denying that the ideas are true, but he says, hey, they might be false, so he backs away from them. But with the stuff he says about dreams and the evil genius, that malicious demon, he ends up backing pretty far away, right? Then you can think about the second meditation as him sort of spinning around in place. It's him desperately trying to find a way to move forward again, but he can't find any secure path. He can't find any path built from certainty. They just all seem to lead back to the same possible confusions. Then finally, at the end of the work we've done so far, Descartes finds that there is at least one certain idea, no matter what else might be going on, even for the insane, even for those in the midst of hallucinations, even for those who somehow don't exist as they think they do, that at the moment they're thinking a thought, whether that thought is true or false, that thinker must certainly exist at that moment. They exist as something. Something must be there doing the thinking, right? And we did some grammar last time with that. If you think I am red or you think I am blue, whether those are true or false doesn't matter. When you say those, I am is part of them, and that part is certainly true. Another way you can think about it this time is that if there's the verb of thinking, I am thinking, there must always be a thing, or a subject is what it's called in grammatical language, the subject of the verb, right? There's an I, a thing which exists, which does the thinking. Okay. So then Descartes can finally take one small tentative step forward back to the things he used to know. That's his first step. Then the second step, as we said, was, he said, wait a second, I know I exist somehow, but there still could be a hallucination. I could be wrong about everything. His next step, his next idea, is that he says, well, thought is what let me determine that even if there's an evil genius and da-da-da, he said, I thought through those things, and even if the evil genius is making me hallucinate that I have a human body, and I don't, in fact, have a human body, there still must be a mind which is having that hallucination about a fake body. So I must for sure be a mind. Maybe I'm a body, but I know for sure that I'm a mind. Then a third step forward from that is he says, well, if I must surely be a mind, and I just maybe could be a body, then I need thought to be myself. Or another way to put this is that the concept of I exist always means thinking, but it doesn't have to always mean three-dimensional body in physical space. Therefore, I am essentially, or like most truly, my mind. And if I have a body, then that will be a sort of secondary aspect of my existence. So, that's where we left off last time. And it's important to go over the steps we've made so far, because if we think about it spatially, Descartes backed away from everything he knew. He sort of spun in place for a while, trying to find a way out. Then he took one small step forward, two small steps forward, three small steps forward. We have to keep in mind that everything he says next is going to be building on those previous steps. So he can't say yet that he has a body, a physical body, and that his eyes tell him more or less the truth about the world. Because that would be a jump forward, right? That would be him leapfrogging forward And then he would include all these mistakes he may be making back in his ideas. So we want to go slowly with Descartes. We can't just start listing off everything he says that he thinks is true, but we have to move from one small certain step to the second small certain step, then a third step which is equally as certain. That's what we've done so far. And then keep taking baby steps through logic, making sure that everything is certain, not just likely or probable or believable, but absolutely surely true. And then if we do that, pretty soon we'll have all the truth back that we used to have, and we'll have cut out every single error, every single maybe idea that we had. So it goes slowly. Continue to be patient, and remember that he's not just saying a bunch of things that are true, but he's moving in an order, a very precise logical order. Step 1 has to come before step 2. Step 2 has to come before step 3, and so on. So, he has said he is certain that he exists. He knows that he can think. Even when he's wrong, he's still thinking. And he also knows that he is essentially or primarily a thinking thing. If he has a body, which he's not sure about yet, that step has not yet arrived. But if he has a body, that will be a secondary, inessential aspect of his life. So what he does in the third meditation, which is, pages 26 to 36 is what we've got here, is he says, let's start analyzing thought. If I'm certain that I am a thinking thing, let's start analyzing these ideas, and maybe it'll tell us more about ourselves, and maybe it'll even tell us if there's an external world causing these ideas. Because remember, with the hypothesis of the evil genius, that's still floating in the background. All he's proven is that he must exist as a thinking thing. He could exist as a constantly hallucinating thinking thing that the evil, malicious demon is controlling. So remember, baby steps. We haven't gotten rid of the reason for doubt yet. So what he says is he doesn't even know if there's an external world yet. He's going to analyze his ideas and see what they tell him. This is what he says, page 26. He says, even if my ideas are false, they seem to come in 3 basic types. And he thinks that these 3 basic types should logically cover every possible kind of idea, every basic kind of idea. So he says, ideas could come in 3 basic ways. That is, he could be thinking ideas in 3 basic ways. Some could be in his mind, what he calls innate. And those are ideas that basically are just planted in the mind as soon as there's a mind. Some could be what he calls adventitious on page 26. That just means that they come from the outside. And he says, then there's other ones that I feel like I created or invented on the spot. So once more, we'll go over these. He says, there's 3 basic ways that ideas could happen inside my head. 1, they could have sort of always been there inside my mind from the beginning. 2nd, they could be new and caused by external objects. 3rd, they could be new and caused by me. So like I said, innate means you're born with it, so they're sort of old ideas, like they're as old as you are. You were born with them. The other ones would come later and either be caused by external objects or caused by you yourself with your power of a thinking thing. So he says, when I hear a noise, even if that noise is, a hallucination, it feels like it's coming from outside of me. But when I daydream something like, there's a hippogriff, for Harry Potter fans, I'm sure that's an animal, right, in one of the Harry Potter books. But you dream up some animal with like the head of an elephant, the body of a tiger, the tail of a golden retriever. Okay, whether that's a true animal or not isn't the point here. The point is when you dream up that that animal, doesn't it feel like that idea was made by you that second? And same thing when I'm trying to snap my fingers next to the recording device. If you can hear that snap, whether it's a fake sound or not, doesn't it feel like it came from not the power of your own brain, but from some other thing? Okay? This is what he's going to do. He's going to move forward from here. And this next part is quite tricky. He's not saying yet, baby steps, right? He's not saying yet that ideas that seem to come from outside of him are in fact coming from outside of him. He's just saying that these are three different possibilities of ideas. Logically, all ideas must either be in you from the start, new and caused by external objects, or new but caused by yourself. Right? Doesn't that seem to cover every possible idea? Either always there, and if it developed over time at a certain point, it's either you made the idea or something else made the idea in you, right? Okay. As I said, he's not saying that there is an external world yet, anything like that. He's just saying these would be the three possible kinds of ideas. Whether true or false, all ideas would have to be of one of these three kinds. So this is what he does next. He says, if he can find an idea which he didn't invent, so that's one of the three possibilities. If he can find an idea which he did not invent, it must be one of the other two possibilities. Do you understand the logic here? It's like if I say, here's three M&Ms. One is yellow, one is red, one is blue, because they have blue ones now. One is yellow, one is red, one is blue. And I said, these are the only three M&Ms you get to choose from. You say, fine. And I say, I'm taking the yellow one away. That's invented by me. I'm taking that one away. What kind of M&Ms do you want? You see how now there's only two left. There's red and blue. It could be either one that you choose, but it can only be one of those two out of the original three. Okay? Same thing, if there's three streets that you can take to a place and one is closed down, it must be one of the other two which you're going to take. Okay. So what he's going to do here next is he's going to say, let me think about my ideas. Once more, whether they're true or false doesn't actually matter much yet. Let me think about my ideas. If I can find an idea which I could not have invented myself, it must be either an innate idea I was born with, or an idea which is caused by something other than myself. Do you see what this is going to raise the possibility of? If Descartes, in the same way, can whittle out the options and say, here's an idea which must have been caused by something other than myself, so then it's, just the blue M&M is the only option left. Then he can prove that there's something else existing in the world which caused that idea in him. So this is going to be huge. Descartes only knows that he's a thinking thing. He doesn't know yet if he makes mistakes, if he's right all the time, if he has a body, if the sun is real, any of that. He's going to find, as we'll find out in a second, he's going to find that he has an idea which he could not have caused in himself. And it must therefore be caused by something outside of himself. So for the first time, this is the next baby step we're going to take. He will establish that something exists other than himself in the world. What it is, that's the fifth step. And not to spoil the surprise, but you've already done the reading, you know the answer. He says the particular idea that he chose to investigate not only is caused by an external object, but it must have been caused by God himself. The only thing, Descartes says, that could cause this particular idea in him, we already established that it can't be him and that it has to be external. Then what he establishes next is that this particular idea is basically, it's so big, it's such a big idea, that it could only be caused by something infinitely big itself. I say big sometimes, I say powerful sometimes, but there's so much to this idea that the only thing that could cause such a big idea, such a profound idea, is something actually powerful and profound itself. That is God must have caused this idea in him. Woo, okay. So it goes 0 to 100 real quick. He starts out with radical doubt. Everything might be false. He gets 1 mile an hour. He exists. 2 miles an hour, a little bit faster. He's a thinking thing. 3 miles an hour. He's essentially a thinking thing. That's like his core real self is his thinking self. Then another little increase in speed. There's different kinds of ideas. A bunch of different steps that we just went through briefly. Those ideas can be caused by self or outside. Some of them must be caused by outside, not self. And then it goes to 100 like that. This particular idea investigates isn't just some random idea. Oh, the vision of the sun must be caused by the sun. It proves that God exists. Once you have God back in the picture, you know what's going to happen to radical doubt once you get God back in the picture? That you prove that God exists? Well, you don't have to worry about doubt so much anymore, do you? But that's coming later. I'm just sketching out for you what we're about to do. And once more, I have to emphasize, you don't have to like it, but you do have to understand it. That all philosophy works a version of this way. It's part of why we're doing Descartes first. All of philosophy works in a version of this way. You very carefully try to make a statement. I exist. And you try really hard to make it as understandable and clear as possible. That you try to make it something that people will not disagree with. Then you slowly build on that and you add another idea that you hope your audience completely agrees with. If you string enough of those together and you make good arguments so that you're not just spouting opinions, but you're proving each patient step of the way, then you can make arguments that can do things like prove the existence of God. Now, other people will make different arguments. Some of them disprove the existence of God, but that's not the point here. The point is if you go really slowly and patiently, which is what philosophy likes to do, and you try really hard to use logic, like, hey, ideas either come from inside or outside, right? Like, yes or no. They just do or don't. Then you can make, you can justify your opinions in a way that if people are willing to listen with you and think slowly, if they're willing to give your thoughts a chance, you can say some pretty impressive stuff. You can do things that many people think are impossible, right? Just through the power of thought. So, around pages 28, 29, and 30, we get how the argument moves forward. So like I said, I just told you that Descartes is going to say, there's an idea that I did not cause. The particular qualities of this idea could not have been caused by anything but God. I do have the idea, therefore God must have caused it. I told you that he said that. Haven't really fully said why yet, though. And always the why is what matters. Okay? For tests, for papers, for chatting philosophy with people, whatever it may be, just saying Descartes says he exists, so what? I mean, I'm a philosopher and I'd say, so what? If you tell me why he thinks that's true, then that's good. That's what we want. So here's what Descartes says, and this should strike you as an unusual argument. This should seem sort of strange, but hopefully convincing. He says, stop and think about it. It seems as if everything has a cause. Right? You don't get something from nothing. It seems like for every effect there's some sort of cause. Now you might say, wait a second, Descartes, you said there's potentially a malicious demon, or that we're in the Matrix, and up looks like down, and left looks like right, etc. And he goes, yeah, okay, fair. Thank you for reminding me. And he says, but it would be, I don't want to say this, it's basically impossible to even think that nothing could give rise to something, and that something could give rise to nothing. So he says, even if your eyes are deceiving you, oh, the fan across the room is further away than it looks like, doesn't it seem impossible that the fan would just exist, then not exist, just like flicker in and out of existence? Right? Another way we could put this, working with the malicious demon, right, is to say, okay, if there's the possibility that I'm having all these hallucinations, the hallucinations might be caused by my brain, right? I might have a lesion or a hole in my brain somewhere. I might have bleeding in the brain that makes me hallucinate. And you go, yeah, I'm with you. And you go, or it could be an evil demon. It could be the Matrix, pumping electricity through my brain. And you go, yeah, those could be ways you'd hallucinate and have errors too. And he goes, yeah, but see, even when we're pretending that we're fooled by the evil demon, it's still that the evil demon would be what? The cause of our hallucinations. And if it's not the evil demon, it could be caused by brain lesions, by tumors, etc. He says, built into the way we think, even if we're hallucinating, etc., is another thing that we can be certain about. He says, it is certain that every effect or object in the world has something for a cause. If something's warm, it got energy from some other object, right? If something's in motion, it got that motion from some other object. So he says, even if there's hallucinations, in the same way you can be certain that you exist, he says you can be certain that effects must have causes. And the way that science picked up on this and expanded this is that you don't get something from nothing, that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, and basically the laws of thermodynamics. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. Matter is neither created nor destroyed. That is, you don't get, matter does not go from existing to non-existing for no reason. Similarly, you don't go from non-matter to matter for no reason. Basically, matter doesn't create other matter, but you know what I mean? There's a set amount of matter and it's shifting around making stuff. Remember, Descartes helped make science possible. That's part of the history we're doing here. Ideas like he has that every effect must necessarily have a cause, that's an inspiration for science. Anyhow, back to Descartes though, he says, okay, the physical world, it seems pretty obvious that if something's hot, it got heat from something. If something's in motion, it got its motion from somewhere. Plants don't grow unless they're given water and sunlight, right? If things happen, there's causes behind them. And he says, even if the physical world is fake, still cause and effect are certain. You can be certain that causes and effects are real things. So this is what he says next, and this part's fairly tricky. He says, okay, causes and effects are certain. If there's a thing in the world that has some sort of cause behind it. And he says, okay, if something is hot, it got its heat from somewhere else, correct? You go, yes. Okay. If object A has heat to give, and it gives it to object B, so object A is a campfire, object B is you. If object A, campfire, is going to give you energy, there's a limit on how much energy it can give you, how much heat it can give you. The campfire cannot give you more heat than it contains in the wood that it's burning. So to put this in more abstract terms, a cause can only give as much to the effect as the cause already has in itself. Another example to make this abstract point more clear. I'm really good at pool. That's not true. That's the malicious demon talking, but let's pretend I'm good at pool. If I hit the cue ball with, say, 8 pounds of force, and it hits the 8 ball, it hits the 8 ball, how much force can the cue ball give to the other ball? At most, you hear me? At most, it can give 8 pounds of force, right? You can't hit a ball with 8 pounds of force and somehow it, out of nowhere, whacks something else with like 20 pounds of force. Right? Not unless you add another cause, but let's not complicate matters. It might give it less because of friction and whatnot. But what's the maximum? Logically, what is the maximum amount of force that the effect, the other ball being moved, could have? At most, it would be identical or equal to the original force. Right? It's probably less, but it cannot be more. Okay, you ready for God? We have to ready the stage for God, right? Let's roll out a red carpet. Okay. You have an idea in you of God. Believe it or not, we're not talking yet about whether God is real or not. Descartes just saying, hey, atheist, hey, Catholic, hey, Hindu, hey, confused person who's not sure what they believe. When I say God, you know what I mean, right? And all of them, even the atheist, will go, yeah, I know what you mean. All powerful, all wise, creator, etc., right? We all know what the word means, even if we don't believe in it. Or, here's the kicker, even if some malicious demon planted that idea in you, you still have the idea, right? Okay, so whether it's true or false, you can think that idea. And this really starts happening, page 31, by the way. Okay, page 30, which I wrote on the PDF. You get my little editorial comment there. It's very confusing, page 30. But page 28 and 29 set up what we're doing here. And 31 is sort of where it starts paying off. Okay. So Descartes says you have an idea in you of the definition of God. Whether you believe it or not, you can think it. And whether it's true or not, you can think it. In the same way, you can think the idea of a unicorn, which sadly is not a real animal. Okay, now he says, remember what we said before. Ideas can either be innate within you, they can be caused by external objects, or they can be invented or caused by your own self. Remember what else we said. We're adding all these ideas together. Remember what else we said. We also said that causes must be can only give so much reality to the effect as they themselves already possess. Basically, the point is that the cause has to be at least as big as the effect. The cause has to be at least as powerful as the effect. Never, ever, ever, ever will the effect or recipient get more than the cause had to offer. Same thing, right? I said the ball has 8 pounds of force. It can only give 8 pounds or less, but 8 pounds is the max. So flip that the other way. If you find a ball moving with 8 pounds of force, you know that something with at least 8 pounds of force whacked it just a second before. Okay, you understand how that's true? It's just the flip of what we said before. Same thing. If I come up next to you and you're sitting by the campfire, and I measure you with my special, Ghostbusters equipment, I measure you and I say, wow, there's 5 kilojoules of heat on this student sitting next to the campfire, then I know that wherever you got that heat, it must have had at least 5 kilojoules of energy to give to you, right? Okay, so you have an idea of God in your head. Descartes asked this simple question. If the idea you have is an effect, where did it come from? If the idea you have in your head of God is an effect, where did it come from? What is its cause? Well, one thing you already know about its cause is the cause must be at least as big and powerful as the effect. That is, the thing which gave you the idea of God must be at least as real and powerful as the idea of God which you have in your head. Now, are you as powerful and real as the idea of God that you have in your head? You better say no. The answer is no. Okay? You're not all powerful, although I bet you're pretty awesome. You're not all knowing, although I know you're plenty smart. Right? So you can imagine something which is bigger than yourself. By definition, if it's bigger than yourself, it's not you. And by definition, if it's bigger than yourself, it is more powerful and bigger than you. Just one last part to put into place. What would be something which is big enough and strong enough and powerful enough to cause an idea of infinite power, infinite wisdom, etc.? It would have to be something actually as real as the idea. What is real in the way of being all-powerful, all-wise, etc.? Only a God. So that is a lot. That is so much that we did right there. So I want you to pause the recording now and just think about that for a while. I would like it, ideally, if you took multiple minutes to just muse on that, to repeat it in your head, to go through the steps one by one again, right? That would be ideal. But at least for a second, we'll actually stop the recording now, so I'll sort of make you pause and reflect on this. Just stop and think about that for a while. Descartes went from not knowing if anything outside of him existed to saying, well, he's got this one idea that A, could not have come from himself. B, has to come from something at least as powerful as the idea itself. C, the only thing as powerful as all-powerful is God itself. D, add it all together, he got this idea not from himself, but from something all-powerful. Therefore, God exists, and there's something other than Descartes for the first time that exists. His thought experiment has finally proven that something other than his own thoughts exist in the world. Just let that sink in for a while.